Welcome back, everyone, to the Moms Like Me podcast powered by Support Now. This podcast, I think everyone is going to find very, very interesting. My guest here today is really delving into a topic that has started to garner a lot more attention in the news, all around really like the more holistic journey of not just medicine, but around fertility. And as we all know, there is more and more women out there struggling to get pregnant, and we are often encouraged to explore pretty aggressive paths and journeys, whether that be IUI and IVF. And Katherine Rohland, my guest here today, is here to provide a different perspective, both through her own experience as well as the journey that she's been on helping families across the country fulfill their dream, but in a different way. So Katherine Rohland, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really thrilled to have this conversation with you.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you. So Katherine, I guess let's start kind of with what got you into this world of holistic medication or holistic wellness, acupuncture, Chinese medicine. There's got to be a background, a backstory to why you fell into this.
Yeah, so I'm an acupuncturist and Chinese medicine practitioner, and I actually fell into the medicine of Chinese medicine and acupuncture through a sports injury. So I was in my mid-20s. I was training for a marathon. I hurt my IT band. I went to every doctor under the sun, and I live in New York City, right? So we have resources to some of the best doctors, the best specialists, the best PTs, the best massage therapists, and nothing was helping me, right? The best they could do was give me a cortisone injection, which would work for a month, and then I was back in pain. And I was in a lot of pain where, if anyone's ever had an IT band injury, or if you haven't and you don't know it, if your IT band attaches to your knee, so it was really affecting my knee and my ability to walk up and down stairs, walk in general, and running was definitely out of the question. After a couple of years of dealing with this, a last-ditch effort, someone recommended me to go see an acupuncturist. And at this point, I was like, I spend so much money, I might as well just throw more at it, right? I didn't really expect anything out of it, but I was like, why not? And after 3 sessions, I was able to walk again. My knee didn't hurt anymore. I could run again. And that's when I started getting hooked, and I started going back for more things, right? I had insomnia most of my life, so I was going for that. I'd had shoulder pain most of my life from being a swimmer. I had tendonitis in my ankles from being a dancer, right? So I kept going to acupuncture for different things, and I just got more intrigued with it. And I was also at a time in my life where I felt like it was a transitional time where I knew I didn't want to do what I was doing at that time, which was working in digital marketing. I knew I didn't want to do that forever, but I just didn't know what I wanted to do. I'd always been interested in the health and wellness industry. Nothing totally landed for me in terms of like nutrition. I was also working as a personal trainer on the side to see if like that was my passion, and it wasn't. And then I just realized that Chinese medicine was my passion, and I applied for school and started school, my master's in acupuncture and Chinese medicine a few months later. That's how I got into Chinese medicine, but how I started focusing on fertility is really based on my own journey and my own struggles. So
Yeah.
my fertility story actually starts when I was around 17. I'm gonna keep it short. I'm not gonna tell you the whole,
Yeah, keep going.
20 years in my life, but my infertility started when I was 17, and I think it starts young for most women, and we just don't realize it at the time. But what was happening for me when I was 17 is my cycles became irregular, and I was only getting my cycle every 4 to 6 months. And so my mom took me to an OBGYN, and she told me to go on birth control. Now, at the time, I wasn't sexually active, and I was a 17-year-old, and I was like, it doesn't really make sense for me to go on birth control if I'm not sexually active, and I don't really care if I'm getting my period, right?
Right.
When you're 17, it's actually fun not to get your period.
It's one less thing. It's one less
Right, it's less
inconvenience.
bandwidth.
Right.
So then I didn't go on birth control. I went back to the same OBGYN a year later, and I was basically yelled at, being told I was being irresponsible, that I'd get osteoporosis if I didn't go on birth control. I was given no other choices, no other options, no explanation, just told to go on birth control. And so at that point, I was like, okay, I'll go on birth control. And I stayed on birth control for the next 12 or so years, not thinking twice about it, right? In my generation, like, thinking about birth control just wasn't a thing. It was something everyone went on and stayed on for a long time. And then I got married at 29, and at 30, we decided we wanted to start a family, so I went off birth control. And honestly, to no surprise, I didn't get my period back, right? So when I was 17, or 18, I went on birth control to band-aid the fact that my cycles were irregular. So then when I went off birth control, it's no surprise that my cycles were still irregular. And at this point, they were non-existent. So it took me almost I'm going to say it's almost 2 years. So about a year and a half to get my period back, just to get a cycle. And in that time, tried Western medicine. I went to an endocrinologist to understand what was going on internally in my body. And I was told that my estrogen was slightly low. And because I have a family history of breast cancer, they didn't want to give me estrogen or any hormone support in that manner. And she actually recommended at that time that I go on birth control. And at that point, that's when I was like, enough. Like, I'm not doing this. I'm not coming back. I just smiled politely and said thank you and didn't come back. But
Wow.
birth control was what started the problem. It's not what started the problem, but it's what masked the problem that then extended for 13 years in the first place. And I didn't understand how going on birth control was going to help support my goal of getting pregnant.
Yeah.
And it was
Birth
at that,
control. It's
yeah, exactly. I think,
seems at odds with one another.
yeah.
Yes.
And at that point, that was like when I was really just like, enough. I'm done. Like, I'm tired of being gaslit. I'm tired of not being given real solutions. And I just did things my own way. I was in my last year in my master's program for acupuncture and Chinese medicine. So I was lucky to have resources, right? I had some of my own knowledge. I also had other acupuncturists that I could reach out for support. I did acupuncture every other week or weekly, depending on scheduling. I took Chinese herbs. I changed my diet. I changed my lifestyle. Most people that aren't aware, but Chinese medicine is more just acupuncture and putting needles into people and moving energy. Acupuncture and Chinese medicine is a combination of your diet, your nutrition, your lifestyle, and your mindset. So I worked to change all of that. And after about a year and a half, I finally got my period back. And 3 months later, I got pregnant.
Wow.
And that's what made me passionate about focusing on fertility and women's health.
Yeah, and again, I think that's what makes you so qualified to do what you're doing. It's you have reaped the beautiful rewards of trying things this way. I'm also so curious to gain your perspective on why do you think that so many women are struggling to get pregnant? And by the way, is that a misnomer? Is it the same as it was a couple of decades before, but we just now have social media and we're hearing about that more? What data or what science have you looked at that kind of shows the different challenges that women in our generation have relative to perhaps our parents or our grandparents?
Yeah, it's really hard to say because we are much more knowledgeable now, which I think is a little bit of a double-edged sword. So I don't actually have the statistics of, fertility 50 years ago versus today, but I do think what we see on social media adds an added mindset and belief challenge to it. And then also the diagnosing of women's reproductive health. I think that's amazing and I think it's important. But then it also puts women in a mindset that they're not able to get pregnant, right? If a woman is diagnosed with endometriosis or PCOS, they automatically think they're going to be infertile when statistically it still means you have a 50-50 chance of getting pregnant, right? 50% of women with PCOS have no trouble getting pregnant. 50% of women with endometriosis have no trouble getting pregnant. So I think that does play a big part in it. I think it also has to do a lot with trying to think about how to word this exactly, but how we've really gone from embracing the feminine to embracing the masculine from a female perspective, which I think is wonderful and really supportive. Great. It's wonderful that women are just staying home with their children, that they're actually working, that women are powerful in the force field and the working industry. But we've taken away a lot of our feminine energy from that. And when it comes to fertility and women's health, it really is our feminine energy that needs to be supported and nourished.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Sorry to cut you off there. I never have heard it framed in that way. And to your point about women being more active in the workplace, we're playing different roles than we've ever played in civilization. And I also think you could just draw a parallel to that also just increases the stress. Like, right, our stress levels are higher because we're not just responsible for our children and running the home. We're also responsible for bringing in income. And for some women, they are the breadwinner. And so our bodies are experiencing different stress levels, cortisol levels that perhaps we haven't seen previously because, to your point, traditionally, the woman, the wife, they stay home and that is their primary job. And that's not to say we all know that can be very stressful. So I don't want to,
Right.
I don't want to in any way deprioritize the stress that comes from running a house. And it's different now.
Right. Expectations are different.
Expectations are different. So, okay, so that makes sense to me. And my next question is along the same lines. I am of the generation of women. I feel like most of my friends struggle to get pregnant, or perhaps it takes them so much longer than they expect. And I see my friends, my family, like then you begin to spiral because then you quickly begin to question, why is this happening? What have I done wrong? Women were so quick to beat ourselves up that we have caused this problem, whether it's the decision to go on birth control, whether it's our diet, why do we wait so long to get married? Why do we wait so long to decide to have children? What would you say is one of the most important mindsets to have when women are ready to have children?
Yeah, when you're ready to have children, you have to believe that your body is capable of getting pregnant and that you are capable of carrying a baby and that you are going to be a mother. One of the biggest things that's going to block your mindset is trying to do something that you don't think you're capable of doing. I always use the analogy, I'm not great with analogies, but this is one I've come up with, is that you wouldn't apply to a job that you don't feel like you have any capacity to do, right? You don't do something that you don't believe that you can do at least the tiniest bit. And if you're trying to get pregnant and your body does not believe you can, right, because your mindset is stuck in this fact that it's going to be hard, then that creates resistance in our body. Whenever we have resistance in our body, that activates our nervous system. In Chinese medicine, we call it our Wei Qi. But our nervous system is connected to every system in our body. So it's kind of like this cascading effect of resisting what your body feels to be true and then affecting your reproductive health.
I think you hear this like when you work out, your mind over body, like your mind controls what your body is capable of. Are there any particular tips that you have for women that are beginning to think about, okay, I think I'm starting to get ready? Are there certain support systems or practices beyond, general like Chinese medicine and jumping into acupuncture? Like, are there any tactics that you have found to be helpful in getting into that right mindset that helps women reframe and become more positive around this experience of trying to conceive?
Yeah, I think it's important to first investigate where that mindset comes from, right? Why do you have this belief? What is that thought coming from? And
Yeah.
then once you can question that, you can then ask yourself, is this true, right? Do I truly believe that I'm not going to get pregnant? Do I truly believe that I'm not going to be a mother? Without a doubt, right? Do I believe this without a doubt? When you start to question yourself, is then when you can rewind the energy.
Mm.
It can
I'm
also sorry, I just wanna add one more thing. It can also be helpful to get off social media, especially the accounts where you're seeing a lot of things about people not getting pregnant, and focus on the people in your life that you know that did get pregnant easily, right? Yes, I know a lot of people who struggled with fertility. I also know a lot of people who did not, right?
yeah,
You don't hear
that's
those stories as much. No one's bragging about that.
also, it's not what the algorithm or feed is trying to bring to the top. They
Right.
want to bring the stories that are going to not scare you, but it is a little clickbaity. People love the drama and sometimes the trauma that comes with this process of both conceiving and having a child. That was exactly my question. It's like, is social media a net positive or a net negative? And it seems like what your recommendation is, use it as a net positive by looking for success, not looking for every reason to believe that you're going to be one of the sad stories or it's going to take you forever. I've actually heard that everyone has a lot of strong beliefs on Reddit, but like Reddit, I've been told when you search for what you want to see, it can actually be a very
Oh,
encouraging community.
interesting.
You can search for, I got pregnant within the first 3 months, and you can become a part of some of these groups. You just have to block out the ones that are saying, I'm struggling to get pregnant. And it's really about your filter. It's about the environment that you create for yourself.
Right.
And so I think that's a really good reminder. And as you know, the social media accounts and stories and reels and all these things, it doesn't stop once you conceive, right? Because every step of the journey, there are
Mhm.
opportunities to be fearful. And that is, I think, an added stress to moms these days is there's almost too much information.
That's a lot I see in my practice too. It's not only getting pregnant, it's in the fear of that first trimester, and then fear of the second trimester, then fear of childbirth, and then you become a mom and you think that fear is going to go away. And I think both of us know that that fear does not go away, right? So you have to learn to be able to control your fear, right? To, in a sense, face your fear and understand that your fear is not true. And it can be really helpful, like you mentioned, to really curate your social media feed to what you're seeing.
I think that's huge. You really have to create these guardrails that allow you to focus on the energy that you know you need to be putting forth, and then surround yourself with that same energy. And I'd imagine, and obviously we at Support Now, we care so much about your village and support system. I'd imagine it's so important to also make sure that you are sharing with your partner and with your siblings and with your closest friends that this is the type of energy I'm looking for. So if you see me kind of begin to go down a doomsday or woe is me mentality, I need you to play this role for me because I need people building me up to remind me that I can do this. And so that's my next question. What role does a support system have in this? And what would you recommend to friends or family members that are trying to support a woman they love that they know are beginning to think about it and also a little bit panic or fearful of what this journey might look like?
Yeah, that's such a beautiful question and such a beautiful point. I think a lot of times women don't share with family or friends that they're trying to get pregnant because of that, right? You don't always want someone constantly asking you, like, oh, are you pregnant? Like, is it happening? Or, watching what you're eating or drinking to see if you're pregnant. We
Sure.
don't want that. No one wants that energy. So a lot of times women end up not sharing. But that also hinders the woman also because then she doesn't have that support system. So I agree with you. It'd be a better world where we feel safe and comfortable to share with all our family and friends. And if you are lucky to be one of those family or friends that a woman shares with you that she's trying to conceive, the best thing you can do is be there to listen to her. Not to
Yeah.
question, not to ask, and a lot of the times not even to give advice. There's so much information out there. And if a woman's trying to conceive, she's probably getting a lot of it already. And a lot of times it kind of feel like, I don't know how to explain it, but it feels pushy, right? It feels like, oh, it's not working. Something's wrong with your body. So you have to go do this. And I'm not saying you should never give advice, right? If you know something or someone who can support a woman who's trying to get pregnant, of course, support her. But it's just like throwing things out every day, like, oh, are you sure you want to drink that coffee? Or, I heard XYZ got pregnant by doing this. It's like, that's not going to be grounding and supportive.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting point. And I think that one piece of advice I hear from people on this podcast all the time about different topics, but I think it applies here as well, is when you're creating kind of your primary support system in major life moments, such as trying to conceive or, God forbid, a diagnosis or something more traumatic. I think one of the things that we can own is to be very clear about what we're looking to get out of the conversation. I
Yes.
think one of the things that we want to vent, but we don't actually say what we want to get out of it. So practicing saying, I am coming to you because I need a sounding board. I need someone to speak to about this. I need to get this off my chest. And please know that I'm not really looking for advice. So if you can hold off on that, I'd really appreciate it. Because once you put guardrails around a conversation, your closest friends will your best friends, they will honor that. But you
Yes.
almost have to give some boundaries to what you're looking for in your conversation because otherwise it doesn't come from a bad place. Like our friends, like they want to see you get pregnant. They want to see you get happy. They want to see you happy. But as you know, it only adds to the overwhelm when the 3 or 4 or 5, 6 closest friends that you're going to are all sharing different pieces of advice, and you don't know what to prioritize.
Right. Exactly.
And it sounds like this is also where someone like yourself comes into play. I mean, you must have find such fulfillment in helping these soon-to-be moms, not just help them get pregnant, which is amazing and such a blessing, but really get to the root cause of a lot of their health issues because like you said, even in your own experience, a lot of times, a lot of the things that women and people are challenged with, whether it's sleep related, chronic pain, it's all the same system. So how, like, I'd love to hear a little bit more about, your experience of working with women and what they've gained as a result of working with you. Again, not just getting pregnant, but what they've been able to uncover about themselves through the process of seeing someone like yourself.
Yes. So my favorite part of my job is actually not the women I work with achieving their goals, right? Achieving their goals of getting pregnant or achieving their goals of not having painful periods or achieving their goals of not having PCOS and endometriosis. That does happen. But my favorite part is to see how women really change and evolve, right? A lot of the work I'm doing is really deep rooted constitutional work. And I do a lot of mindset work. And that's important because our mindset's connected to our physical energy, which is connected to our physical health, right? So it's really seeing women change, seeing their anxiety that they didn't think they could ever live without just melt away. See them
Right.
to be more carefree. I have had women change careers. I've had women change relationships, change locations that they live in, and really start to follow their path and their passion and really step into who they are. I like to think of it as my job is really just helping bringing women back to who they are, right? Bringing them back to their true selves. And
Yeah.
that by far is the best part of my job.
Right. It's like you're not just helping them get to the destination. You're changing their entire world. You're changing
Right.
the whole their whole center of gravity so that they can live life in a completely different way. And it's so true. Women, and this is statistically proven as well, women are feeling more stressed out, more isolated, more burned out than ever. And that experience that we have in our work life and our family life, it impacts our stress levels and our anxiety levels and our ability to show up as our best selves. I mean, it feels very overwhelming. And what
Right.
you're selling is you can really just kind of reshape that. You can reframe that. And you don't have to feel like you're in this cycle that you never feel like you can get out of. Like you can get
Right.
out of it. You have to prioritize it. Catherine, I'd also imagine it's really interesting to be I feel like you are doing this great work at a really interesting time. I mean, to me, from what I can see, there is this movement that is starting to take off in this country where women, and not just women, everyone is starting to question these traditional ways of looking at health and not necessarily putting down the system that we have, although there are flaws that I think everyone can see, but just giving people the opportunity to say there are other ways
Right.
of looking at things. So
Right.
talk
To
to me about
figure
what
them
that
out.
experience has been to kind of be in this trend and what you've seen from when you first started to now. Like, is it accurate that you're seeing more people become receptive to this? It's not just this woo woo. It's actually a really effective way for a lot of people to get back to on their health journeys.
Yeah, I've been practicing for 8 years. And I feel like when I first started practicing, half of my job was just convincing people while they're there, right? Why are they in my office? Now people come knowing, right? They come knowing it works. They come knowing there's another option and they come excited to embrace that other option. A lot of what I do notice though is we're still stuck in this Western mindset, which is normal and understandable because that's how we were raised, right? I was raised with Western medicine also, but a lot of times we still get stuck in this mindset of we want things to happen quickly. We want it to almost be like a pill that just solves our problem, right? I think a lot we've gone from taking prescription medicine to taking a whole bunch of supplements, right? It's still treating the illness as the same manner as like we're just going to band-aid this instead of looking at the root cause. And that's the biggest thing I see in my practice now is women still want like a really quick solution. And the truth is with Chinese medicine and acupuncture, for acute things, yes, it is very quick, right? If you walk in with back pain or a knee injury, you can be out in 1 or 2 sessions and be feeling your best. But when we're talking about long-term chronic illnesses, reproductive health illnesses, infertility, it takes time, right? It takes time for your body to balance itself, to adjust. But it is 100% worth it. When I'm treating women for reproductive health or fertility, yes, it's supporting that condition, but it's supporting them for their entire lives, right? So they can be a more present mother. They can be a more energetic mother and spouse and caregiver, and they can really learn to nurture and take care of themselves, which will also prevent more chronic illness and disease in the long term.
I think what you laid out it's very interesting because I think can just draw parallels to how we typically think as a Western civilization. We are a capitalist society and we go fast and we want things now. This country runs faster than any country in the world. And so I think those expectations that we have because of just how this country is wired, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing, right? Like we live in the most powerful, most successful country in the world, right? You can achieve more here than you can achieve almost in any other country ever, which is amazing. And what that does is it creates this expectation gap that we expect the things that we see in our everyday life to be as fast and quick and as almost to get that dopamine effect as quickly in the workplace or wherever else in your life as we are in our health. And what you're saying is that's part of the problem. Like our expectations of how fast and easy and how joyful it's all going to feel. It's kind of there's like an inverse correlation. And I
Right.
think that there's it makes sense why so many people struggle to get to this because it's just not how we're wired It's not how we're raised. It's not how we're incentivized. And so it takes a lot of like unwiring, unraveling to kind of recenter, refocus on how to look at things like this.
Right. I think a big part of my fertility story that people, in a sense, might gloss over is the fact that it took me almost 2 years to get pregnant. And at
Right.
no point did I go to Western medicine. At no point did I take any Western medicine drugs or IVF or IUI. I worked to balance my body naturally, which sometimes just takes time.
But it could take time regardless. I mean, how many
Yeah.
women do you know that do 3 or 4 rounds of IVF, and that also takes multiple years. So it's not, and I think what you're saying is so important. It's not a race. And there can be a lot of value in doing things differently, not just for the purposes of getting pregnant, but in the purposes of really creating a more fulfilling and a healthier being. My last
Exactly.
question before we hop here,
Yeah.
I think a lot of women in our generation struggle with the naysayers or even with their own parents that are looking and saying, "Well, why are you doing it like this?" So what is your piece of advice for people that have those voices in their heads that are doubting or putting you down or questioning why you're doing things a certain way? Is there a certain line or phrase or reframe that you have for these women that want to stand up for themselves, but also want to be very respectful to people that they know care about them, but they just might not see it the same way that they do?
Yeah, that's a really wonderful question and one I've never had before. My initial response is really that we need to just block out all the sound altogether, right? We really need to stop and listen to ourselves and our intuition, which I think is, the big issue for a lot of women, a lot of people is that we've lost our compass. We've lost our ability to be true to ourselves. And when you feel strongly about something and when you feel good about something, no matter what anyone else is saying, you have the ability to just kind of like swat it off, right?
Yes.
So a lot of it comes down to building that inner strength, but also just being open and honest about, like, this is my path and this is what feels supportive to me.
Yeah, I love that. Catherine, this has been so insightful. I really, I think it's incredible what you've built. I love being able to personally watch you on my Instagram and see a lot of the knowledge that you're putting forth. Where can more people find out about you, your services, if they want to follow along or suggest to someone that they know is kind of in this journey currently?
Yes, thank you. You can find me on social media on Instagram and TikTok at Mid-Hatted Medicine Woman. I also have my own podcast where I go into deeper topics about fertility and women's health that I can't fit into 2-minute videos on social media. You can find me at There Chi Goes QI. And I also have a fertility membership and course coming out this August that I'm really excited about because this has been in the works in my mind for many years. And I finally felt like it was the right space and the right time to develop it. So, in this course, I will help you go through investigating mindset, thoughts, and beliefs and how to unravel those in your mind and in your body. And I also go through everything from diet, nutrition to lifestyle to help really optimize your health, optimize your fertility so that you can get pregnant naturally or just optimize your reproductive health.
Amazing. Catherine, I'm wishing you all the success in the world. Keep doing what you're doing. It's really incredible and so empowering for women that are out there trying to conceive and struggling for answers and wanting to find the right ways of doing things. So thank you for everything you do and look forward to future conversations with you.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful being here today. Thank you.